You see, the story to see God as Dad and to see God as being so is a presentation of hope to occupy the mind. And if it does, well, it sets aside the mind dwelling on the tragedy of whatever it is you were coping with, isolation or loss or whatever, you know. It's exactly what is required. It is like turning on the telly or watching a film or dropping into YouTube for a while. It lifts you from the track you're on onto a different track. And well, a good foundation, instead of a foundation of hope and optimism that builds assurance and therefore looks for opportunities. You're alive again, you're creating, you're solving, you're mastering the situation. Whereas before you were overwhelmed and going downhill and what's it, in the Slough of Despond? It's the Pilgrim's Progress concept. He's fallen into the lake of mud and he can't get out, the quagmire swamp of the despairs that are possible to experience in this life here. Don't react too strongly. I mean, they are a blessing because they tell you the way not to go. They're screaming at you. You need to rethink life fast. And the story, Jesus' story, is a very, very serviceable rethink from the point of view of giving fast recovery, not just numbing your mind in the sad state that you're in, but on the contrary, an energization of mind into life and hope and expectation and creativity. It puts you back on your feet. And sure, it's got these extravagant notions of towards a goal of abundant life and life eternal, of blessedness. It presents you with a preoccupation with a company, you may say an imagined company of God, but a transforming imagination, as opposed to the imagination that is despairing and hallucinating into a demonic quagmire, slough of despondency and death. It is indeed, the Christian story I'm talking about is indeed a miraculous cure. Taste and see when you're in such circumstances, but to be able to taste and see when you're in such circumstances, you need to be, for instance, or it helps to be, shall I say, greatly, to have already thought about God and wondered about the story, to know the story. Because when you're in that slough of despond, you're not going to feel any hope that will inspire you to even look at the story, only despair. Which ultimately is sort of suicidal. Suicide is just the practical demonstration of the spiritual hopelessness within. the story changes that. It's miraculous. I'm saying in a sort of philosophical sense now rather than religious. I mean, there was some discussion last night at a philosophy meeting I went to whether early Hinduism was actually philosophy and not religion. And I came back strongly saying, but you're talking about, in the Bhagavad Gita, you're talking about Arjuna talking to an avatar, Krishna. I mean, personification of God. What do you mean it's not religious? And I realised I was quite strong on this. I mean, forcefully I was putting the argument. And I thought, hang on now, why are you putting this so forcefully, Marshall? Well, I'm defending something I think that is very important, I suppose. That, but in a sense, in the cool light of morning now, it is daylight now, what's the time? 5:46. And I'm thinking, well, we distinguish two types of the entity. One extreme of it we're thinking of as religion, and the other extreme we're thinking of as philosophy. But they are both simply the preoccupation of reasoning and mind and dwelling upon, thinking about. And the religious one we might typify by being theological, as in there's some notion of a supernatural, loving being caring for you, whatever the religion is. Or we might think of it in terms of philosophical, cold analysis of what we take in philosophy to be objective reality, but in fact is our mental handling of such, our mind handling reality, and seeing it as this and that and analysing it accordingly. They're simply systems of thought, aren't they? And they blend into each other, and they unquestionably both have their place. I mean, I think everything in the world that is in the world possibly has its place. Except us. And we are here simply to look at it and learn and understand and be transformed by the experience of this visit. But this is not our home. This is a world of transitory things, and we long for the eternal, fullness of life, life eternal. In some sense, I mean, I'm speaking in parables, aren't I? In the parallels. You have to approach this as a Gnostic. It's all thought. We are Gnostic thought, not physical body. The physical body is incredibly transitory. But the thought and you thinking and how you think of yourself and so on, your analytical ability of mind doesn't seem much different today than it was when you were 7, 8, 11, 12, 17, 20, 30, 40, 50. You feel it's the same person. There's a certain unchanging nature in this thinking nature that you have. Sure, the content is changing, and the understanding may be changing, but it's still thought. And if you were to stop thinking at the moment, everything would be irrelevant, except you are still supposedly thinking somewhere else, which you may do. when you slip away from this material world, perhaps you do go back to heaven and have a review. Right, where are we now? Where have we got to? Looks like you've still got a few things to do. Or, well, there's not much point in you going back there again, is there? Been there, done that. What's the next step? That's near-death experience view that's often sort of more earnestly presented by people that have had such experiences. But you see what I mean, don't you? Thought is everything, and stories are everything to thought and imagination. And we're actually dealing with the stuff of life, not to be dismissed as, oh, it's just fairy tales. The fairy tales are much better than horror stories. And if you're in the midst of a horror story, perhaps Mum should read to you a fairy story instead. Something that's light and beautiful and lovely and will bless you. God bless. Thank you, Heavenly Dad.